Welcome back to Fast Market here on the Schwab Network. It's time for our cash tag segment. For that, let's bring in our next guest. That's Megan Brantley, Vice President of Research at Likefolio. Welcome back to the show, Megan.
Hey guys, happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you, Megan. So we're talking Reddit. I wanted to hit on this one because it's hitting all-time highs. It's had a great run so far this month. They've only had 2 earnings since they've turned public, but it seems like they're still not making money. But at the same time, maybe is it advertising dollars spent by companies this year, that total addressable market as far as advertising spend, really helping all the social media stocks. But Reddit, it seems like there's a little bit more optimism in it. Is it warranted from your data?
Yeah, whenever we look at Reddit, we see a bit of a mixed bag. It's growing users really well. It's increasing its revenue. It's, starting to take a bigger chunk of those advertising dollars, like you mentioned, but it's still struggling to monetize at the same level as some of its peers, especially those second level peers, whenever we look at names like a Snapchat or like a Pinterest. But moving forward, right now at least, advertising is key for this name. It comprises about 90% of Reddit's revenue is driven via advertising. And so I think that that's going to be a really important area to watch moving forward. And on this chart, there's a couple of main takeaways that you can look at. These are visits to the different companies' ad platforms. So these would be visits from potential advertisers or ad buyers and things of that nature. And what you can see is that Reddit is actually growing. It's overperforming a lot of the names on this list, other than Snapchat, which is perhaps a story for another day, that the really nice traction that we see there. But at large, we see some growth from these second-tier platforms like Snapchat, like Pinterest, like Reddit, chipping away at some of the market share from these major legacy advertising giants like a Meta, like a Google, like even a TikTok. And so I think that that's something that Reddit has going for it, that it is continuing to grow its piece of the advertising pie, but it's still relatively small compared to some of its other peers. So you could look at it one way of saying, okay, it's taking a smaller piece, but also that means a lot of room for potential growth. Another area that we're watching whenever we think about Reddit is its ability to monetize the data that it has. And so you can imagine, just in the nature of how consumers use Reddit, how valuable it would be for companies like Google, for companies like OpenAI, to use the way that, regular people speak and talk to train generative AI models. And I think right now that data licensing segment only comprises about 10% of its revenue. So a lot of room for improvement there to kind of diversify its business model at large. And so we'll be listening for those partnerships. I think that if Reddit announces major partnerships like that, that could move the needle for its stock in the near term. And then long term, we're just watching to see it continue to take a larger piece of advertising share, because it's still getting its sea legs there. It's still working out the kinks and trying to make sure that it's placing brand ads alongside appropriate content and things of that nature. So it'll be interesting to watch moving forward, because this is a company that's certainly still getting its sea legs.
Megan, digital communities, right? That's what we're dealing with now. And you mentioned they're going to make all their money off advertising revenue. What about their human-generated data, the massive pile of data that they're going to collect on a daily basis from all their users? Is there a way for them to monetize that? I mean, your chart showed who's doing well, and it still amazes me that Google Alphabet is trailing this group of names so much when their products are so widely used. Is this data that all these firms are collecting, is that really their biggest commodity that they sell?
Yeah, I think that that's really their biggest untapped revenue source right now, is that data licensing business and how it can leverage the massive troves of information and just how consumers speak, how we actually talk. That a lot of other sites may not necessarily have. Whenever consumers are talking on Reddit, they're speaking very differently than an article that you might read in a newspaper. And that's really important and really valuable for these companies that are focusing in things like generative AI, or even just trying to understand the consumer. For a firm like us at Likefolio, trying to understand consumers, we're looking at Reddit mentions. We're trying to understand how consumers talk about different brands and products. So I think that there's definitely potential there for Reddit to turn up the volume and grow that piece of its revenue pie, which will be essential moving forward. But I think another piece or a critical component of that is for Reddit to continue to kind of broaden its audience base. That's one area where we see a little bit of struggles. Whenever we look at just total unique visitor growth, we see a little bit of a drop off this year versus last year where it was growing pretty significantly. When we look at engagement rates, so how much time consumers are spending on Reddit, those rates are rising. So the people that use Reddit tend to stick on Reddit and tend to spend more time on the platform, but it's starting to have trouble at least attracting those new users in the US. And so this is another area, and I think it's one of Reddit's focus area. Whenever Reddit talked about on its last earnings call, its first focus was advertising, its second focus was, improving its overall user experience. And so there's a lot of room for improvement there that Reddit could do to attract new users and keep them on its platform. As it stands, I think around 62% of Reddit users are male, so there's certainly a larger potential there to attract a wider range of the US and international demographic, and which would also be well received by advertisers as well.
Yeah, that was kind of the chart that I was going to kind of hit on, that we're seeing a decline here in a monthly average unique visitors. But at the same time, Megan, I look at this as Reddit's one of those platforms where you can go in, ask a question, get involved in a topic with a forum, a bunch of other people. What is the threat to ChatGPT and a lot of these other AI capabilities where, that maybe search goes away in a specific realm where, hey, I don't need to go on Reddit and to get into some forum about a discussion about something because I can just ask ChatGPT or, some other form of AI where I can get probably, better answers? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a very legitimate threat. I think that's one thing that Google is noticing as the search giant. We're seeing signs of people saying, I don't want to go to Google anymore. I'm not necessarily getting the answers I want. I'm just going to use ChatGPT. And so I think that is a potential area of partnership for Reddit as well. So we'll see how that shakes out. But certainly there's a shift in the consumer psyche about how they are gathering information and where they're getting information. And we're seeing more and more signs that consumers are going less to these search engine aggregators like a Google and more to a ChatGPT or even a social media, which you could argue that Reddit is a form of social media where users feel like they can trust their peers more than they can trust a large search aggregator.
Yeah, now they don't have earnings for a few weeks, Megan, but what would your score be? I mean, stock's elevated at this point.
It is. And so this is something that we would not be surprised to see the stock continue to run up a bit into earnings at the end of the month. And if it does, I think that our score would support more of a pullback for this name. This is one, though, where, we only have 2 earnings reports to go off of, not a lot of history here. And so we expect a lot of volatility near term. But I think the big picture is we really want to see signs that Reddit can monetize and grow its average revenue per user. I think last quarter that was its Achilles heel, and so we'll be watching to see if it can turn around, because even if it posts great revenue growth and great user numbers, if it can't monetize those users, then we don't think that the market will think that the report is strong enough.
Right. All right. Great stuff. Great data. As always, Megan, appreciate it.